What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and we are here this week to talk about the first story in the Kaladesh set, block, etc. of stories. I'm excited. It's started off real good, so
yes.
I'm looking forward to it. It's interesting the way that they ended it. If you missed last week's episode, definitely go give it a watch. I don't know that we're going to get too much into that just because this story was very involved and I want to actually talk about it because that's what we're here to review. But I do want to continue the discussion from last week. So like I said, if you missed last week's, definitely go give it a watch. Like I said, maybe what I think we're going to end up doing is the way that the stories worked out. Homesick was released on Monday instead of Wednesday, and then they released another story on Wednesday. So what I think we're going to do, since we release on Friday and Monday, is this video will come out on Friday. We will have another JaAR on Monday for the story that was released on Wednesday, just so that we can catch up, because we want to make sure that we get into this. The story on Wednesday looks to be just as long as the one today was, and this one was a very long story.
Yes.
But since we're talking about it, we might pepper in some discussion following last week as well, although it's definitely not going to be as in-depth as I'd like to get just because of time constraints. Otherwise, you guys are going to be sitting here watching this video for an hour, which maybe some of you would enjoy, but, you know, we'll see.
Let's not do that.
No. But this story was very long, but what I will say is personal opinion, this is how you do a long story correctly.
Yes, it is.
Because when we talked about the Thalia story, Thalia and the Flight of Nightmares from Eldritch Moon, that was long, like debilitatingly long. Now, the story was okay, don't get me wrong, but it was not this. This story showed you how to do a long story correctly, and it was great. It started off just talking about the Planeswalkers, their interactions. I have said from the start that that is the best story. When the characters that they are trying to show are interacting with one another, that is when you get the best story out of it, and that's what we got. We got an amazing story, full of interaction, full of character development. You learned a lot about these characters. I forget who it was on Twitter, and I do apologize for that, but it was one of the Wizards of the Coast staff members who said that he was excited because Kaladesh would be the first new plane that they were getting back to, or that they were coming to, following the change in storytelling.
Yeah.
Meaning following the Battle for Zendikar block, following the Shadows over Innistrad block. This is the first fully new plane that they are coming to. All the others were planes that they were returning to. Right. So this is how Wizards will show us if they can properly build a new plane in our eyes with a new story. And like we just said, if this is how they're starting, it's going to be great.
Yes, it is.
Because they did such a good job. And technically, we're not even on Kaladesh yet.
Yeah.
Right? This story did not, it took place entirely on Ravnica.
Right.
We heard about a planeswalk, which we can presume is to Kaladesh. They have not technically confirmed that yet, but it's almost definitively what it was.
Well, we did find out that Nissa is going to Kaladesh.
Nissa has agreed to go to Kaladesh. She's going to go with...
Regardless of whether Chandra and Liliana are there.
Right. She's going to go with Bond.
She's going.
Yeah. But we also... You can look at other forms of media, and today, Wednesday, when we film this... they did release a video talking about different things that are coming out relating to Magic in 2017, but they also allowed the new president of Wizards of the Coast to show us the picture of Chandra on Kaladesh.
Right.
So whether that planeswalk was to Kaladesh or not, they will eventually end up there. So we at least know that much, which might be interesting. Then it would be all the female members of the Gatewatch on Kaladesh, and the male members stay on Ravnica, and they did confirm that Jason Gideon will be getting their story next, which I guess would be on the new Amonkhet, I believe was the name of it, but the new like Egyptian-themed set, which would be really cool. Yes. I mean, Gideon does kind of have a history with kind of a multitude of gods, from being from Theros, and now he's going to go to the Egyptian-themed set where they have gods as well. Maybe. We'll see. But regardless, This story, phenomenal. They did an amazing job with the members of the Gatewatch. They did an amazing job introducing Bon to us. If I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize. I believe it's Bon, just because of how Nalar is pronounced. So maybe it's Bane? For Nalar Bane. Who knows? Hopefully we'll have a sound clip of someone.
Funny if it was Bane.
Right? It would be very funny, because he's like the opposite of Bane. But anyway, yes, so Bon, Bane, I'm going to call him Bon for now. If I see a clip of somebody saying it differently.
I'm going to call him Bon Bon.
Bon Bon. That's awkward. But yes, so he is a Soratami. It was very, very interesting. I'm sorry. He was a Vidalcan, not a Soratami. Soratami are the moon people, which is what Tamio is. Although I did make the joke that with the properness in the way that he speaks, he and Tamio would be a very interesting couple. Speaking
by
of
interesting, you mean a couple that you'd probably want to avoid on the regular.
Although, speaking of couples, we did have a lot of very interesting interactions between Jace and Liliana. We had a lot of very interesting interactions between Gideon and Liliana. In terms of the Liliana, really more so than Gideon, but kind of Liliana.
Kind of Nissa and Chandra too.
Nissa and Chandra, well, that's just because there's a lot about Chandra, which is good. They developed Chandra so well in this story alone. And again, homesick, clearly referring to her being homesick for Kaladesh, which is really not even technically true, because every time she thought about Kaladesh, she like cried. So I don't know that that's like homesickness or if it's fear of maybe having to go back there, but then Liliana shows up as she called herself Big Sis Liliana, coming in to try to help her. I genuinely think that whole thing with Liliana is her trying to gain favor with Chandra.
Yeah, just manipulate.
Right, and she mentioned about the fact that she was aware that Jace and Gideon were kind of at odds with one another, but not really. Like, they were trying to be proper about it, but Bon basically said, hey, who's in charge here? Yeah. And the two of them were like, well, we are, but we aren't, but we're this and we're that.
But you, but me. And I was sitting there going, okay, Liliana.
Yep, and sure enough, I smiled.
Sentence.
Yes, I smiled because I was looking at the story and I saw that Liliana was going to be the one to stand up next. And she even mentioned at some point during the story that her living on Dominaria, she remembers or is having trouble remembering, but kind of remembers the proper regal way to handle, like, you know, dignitaries or whatever. Like, that's just, she's used to that. And Jace kind of gets upset with her for doing that because Jace was trying to be all prim and proper as well, and it just kind of didn't work out.
The impression I got is, okay, Dominaria, it's S&M.
It's not.
And he doesn't like it because she ended up breaking up with him, even though... I mean, it was clear that he was, like, the submissive one, and she just left his ass, and now he's mad about it.
If you're new to the series, there is a theme of Amy referencing the fact that Jace and Chandra are exes of one another.
Liliana.
Did I say Chandra?
Yes.
Sorry, Liliana, yes. Not Chandra. Speaking of Chandra, though, again, this story was clearly about her. You got a lot of insight into her thoughts. There was a portion of this story that was just drop-dead hysterical. It was amazing. Just Chandra's interactions with following her meeting Bon, everything after that, after she storms out of the room where he's bad-mouthing rebels, which really just means he's like bad-mouthing people like her parents. When he's bad-mouthing rebels, she leaves. Every time you see her after she leaves, perfect. Because she's punching a punching bag or a sand punchy thing, as she called it. She calls Gideon Gids, which is just hilarious.
Adorable.
And actually questions Liliana when she calls him like meat sack or something or whatever she calls him. And beef, beef slab, I think was what it was. She says beef slab, and Chandra's like, "Who the hell's that?" and she's like, "Oh, Gids," and that's how the story starts.
Yeah.
Is with that interaction, which is just so funny.
Oh, I don't think that's that funny compared to the rest of it.
Oh, I do.
Read the rest of it.
Definitely read the rest of it.
The rest of it is great.
The interactions that Chandra has with the punching bag and the sand and putting out the fire and then running to Nissa for help and then messing up.
Right. The interactions that she has with herself. I mean, most of the story is just her inner dialogue.
Yes.
And it's fantastic because, I mean, at least for me, because I'm sitting there going, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I've done that before. Pull out my own hair. Just to stay focused.
Tugging on her hair so that she can remain focused because she's getting off on tangents and she was tripping over herself.
What is coming out of my mouth?
Yeah, exactly. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Just getting really frustrated. Which, I mean, come on. To a degree, I think all of us have had those moments where we're like, all right, whatever you just said was stupid. Maybe you should stop doing that. I mean, Chandra was kind of way over the top with it because she was like, all right, I'm going to stop walking now. I'm not going to open this door. Okay, but now that I've opened the door, I'm not going to walk further into this room. Okay, but now that I've walked further into this room, I'm not going to do this. She was very nervous. Well, I think she was nervous, but she was also like, she knew she had to do it. And I think that it was very good, or well done, I should say. Usually you would think that this would be something that would be continued over a multitude of stories, but the fact that they were able to introduce the interaction between Nissa and Chandra, where Chandra was like, look, I get overwhelmed a lot, and I light things on fire, and that's bad. And, and she starts trying to relate it to, well, I don't want to hurt Gideon's things and I don't want to destroy Jace's things. But it's really for herself, right? Like, she can't focus. Just for the
sake of having control over herself. Yeah.
And she said to Nissa, like, hey, I was in your head, right? We talked and I know that what is inside your head. I know that you're super calm and cool and collected and I want that again. Is there a way that we can do that again? And Nissa was like, I could teach you how to meditate if that's what you want. And Chandra was in her own head, so she just kept talking and kind of just, again, got nervous and ran away. And Nissa felt responsible for that.
Right.
Chandra ran away feeling responsible for it because she felt like she was an idiot. And so she felt responsible, but in turn, Nissa actually felt responsible.
Yeah.
And
she was like, oh my God, like, what did I do to her?
Well, and she kind of alluded to the fact that she believed that Chandra was like a baby, like a bird, not necessarily a baby bird, but a bird, where Nissa said she remembered feeding birds seeds and that if she moved the wrong way, the birds would fly away, despite the fact that they were enjoying the seeds. And so Nissa said that she was sitting there like a seed, and Chandra came over to talk to her, but then Nissa moved the wrong way, and Chandra fluttered away, aka ran out. And it really was just because Chandra was kind of in her own head and going a little crazy, and so she got upset and ran off, and Nissa blamed herself, which is really cool.
Until later when she found out about the whole
rebel thing, and
the whole Kaladesh, Chandra's history.
But I don't know that she stopped feeling that way.
Whatever the heck his name is.
Bond, yeah. But I don't know that means that she feels that it wasn't her fault because
she said, I am not a seed.
She said, I'm not a seed, but regardless, that was what she was in her own head. But I think that because she felt responsible for Chandra running away and she wanted to be able to help her meditate so that she could, because I think what Nissa said at one point was she was like, all she was asking for was a moment of peace. And I couldn't give her that because I moved the wrong way and she got scared and ran off. She said, and it was the kind of thing where she felt like she was responsible. She wanted to help Chandra. And so when she heard that Chandra was on Kaladesh, or might have gone to Kaladesh with Liliana, which seemingly all of them, without saying it, all of them were like, that's not a good pairing. The two of them going together and nobody else, not a good thing.
That's probably true.
And they didn't say that though, right? They never expressly said that. They just kind of, Nissa mentions that Gideon and Jace looked at each other and then looked at Nissa and then talked about who was going to go to Kaladesh. Right. Whereas,
like, okay, this has to happen now.
Whereas you wouldn't necessarily think that was necessary, but they're going to. Yeah. And And yet, I thought that, again, this is the part that I thought was really good. Not that all the parts weren't really good. This is one of the parts that I thought was really good, was the fact that earlier on in this story, when we were looking at it from Nissa's perspective, Nissa talked about how much she disliked Ravnica.
Yes.
She wasn't comfortable there because it was a big, bustling city type of an area. It's the city of guilds.
She needs rural.
She needs, well, and she said, there's too many people. There's more people here than I ever felt like could exist, right? It's more people than she is used to or ever thought would be possible. And now she has to go to Kaladesh. And despite the fact that she mentioned that she didn't like Ravnica, and she even said, okay, well, Kaladesh is full of...
I was surprised that she didn't ask one of them to go with her.
And I think, but that's the point, right? That's the progression of this story, is they showed the moment of, I hate it here. It's terrible here. Oh, I wish I was back on Zendikar. Zendikar, my best friend for over 2 years, isn't there anymore to talk to me when I have questions. And I wish I could just go back to Zendikar or a place like Zendikar. And then the first opportunity she gets to go somewhere that is similar, if not maybe worse than Ravnica, she takes it. Why? Because of her sense of responsibility to her new friend, to her new companion, despite the fact that she knows it's going to be terrible for her. And I don't think, with Nissa being Nissa, I don't think that going with Gideon or going with Jace would make that any better. Right? Because she still wouldn't be able to communicate with the Earth any better.
It could also be because they talked about the ley lines in the sky.
The Aether. The ley lines in the sky being the Aether, it could be.
Maybe she sees that as kind of an opportunity to, get some of her vitality back.
But she would be in big trouble because that's all regulated. She wouldn't be able to just manipulate it all. They talk, Bond talks about that.
Yeah, but she's a planeswalker, so maybe she thinks she can just kind of do that real quick without anyone noticing, and then,
She's Nissa. I don't think she thinks that.
No, she probably doesn't.
I don't think Nissa thinks that way.
Yeah, probably not.
But I think that that's why I'm saying I think this is very intriguing, right? We discussed, again, if you're new to the series, we've discussed previously, or at least I have, I think both of us have, that there was a need to make Jace specifically look weak. Because otherwise, he's just going to show up, he's going to be a telepath, the most powerful telepath in the world, just an insane, strong telepathic mind.
Instances where that isn't the end it all, fix it all scenario.
And we've already seen Nissa and Chandra as a combination be able to combine and destroy 2 Eldrazi titans in Kozilek and Ulamog. Those 2 went down to Nissa and Chandra combining and just burning them to death. Things that could take over and eat an entire plane of existence were killed by 2 planeswalkers. And so now these 2 planeswalkers, along with Liliana, who, again, almost single-handedly stood up to Emrakul, now all three of these planeswalkers are going to Kaladesh to stop some rebels, or to help quell some political unrest, and going back to the conspiracy stories, I talked about the fact that I was hoping that there would be some kind of a political intrigue set. And they slightly did that with conspiracy, although there was absolutely no payoff for that entire story, which was completely ridiculous, and I'll talk more about that in a future video, I'm sure, because what the hell? No payoff whatsoever.
The worst.
Absolutely the worst. Just a complete, oh my god. Anyway, now they have these 3 women who they have to make some of them look weaker, right? Chandra is going to be caught up in her own head with, this is my home world, this is where my parents died. Maybe she reverts back even further into a childlike mindset where she can't necessarily tap into her power, or she's afraid to. Nissa maybe can't tap into her power.
Opposite.
What, that she's just going to blow up?
I'm thinking that Liliana is going to come up with, Yeah, because Liliana was there.
Liliana has planeswalked.
For the bond thing, right? Or no?
Yes.
Like, did she listen to...
Yes.
Okay, that's
she
what I
heard.
thought.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. She was not there when they revealed... When they mentioned Chandra's last name of Nalar. Liliana was not there because Chandra wasn't there. It was after they planeswalked.
I didn't think so.
But Liliana specifically said when she went up to Chandra, like, hey... It's pretty, like, because Liliana had mentioned in the beginning, again, it all ties together so beautifully. Liliana had mentioned in the beginning that she was hard-pressed. I mean, she's 200 plus years old. She was hard-pressed to find someone who was a worse liar than Chandra. And so later on in the story, when Liliana saw her in the alleyway, she knew exactly what was going on. She knew that Chandra's homeworld was Kaladesh. Something had happened there in her childhood, in her past. Liliana just read that off of Chandra's actions.
Well, yeah, but... I don't know. Because now that she doesn't know that for sure, but Chandra could tell her on the way there. I mean, conceivably.
Because she said, let's talk, so they were going to go
thinking, Chandra is thinking, or Liliana is thinking, hey, while Bond is over on Ravnica, we can shake up some stuff over here on Kaladesh.
Maybe. I mean, they're gonna, like...
Maybe we can, like, get away with some things that we wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah, I mean, Nissa and Bond are gonna follow right after. And obviously, again, we will have a new story coming out on Monday, so, or a new jar coming out on Monday when we talk about that. But
And Nissa and Bond will follow, but then Nissa will switch sides. If this is the scenario, Nissa will switch sides, end up helping Liliana and Chandra.
Chandra. I don't know. I don't see
Chandra is Kaladesh.
But what I think is very interesting too is, again, political intrigue set. They talk about the concept of regulating aether and distributing it appropriately. It's very reminiscent of communism, right?
Yeah.
The government regulates where all of the aether goes.
Everybody gets the same
and equally distributes it.
Anyone who wants anything more is, a threat.
And because the rebels are saying, well, no, we want more of that.
Right.
To do our inventions or whatever.
We just want, what we're entitled to based on, what we do.
And this is a discussion that we've had many times on this series as well. I am the type of person who looks for the good guys and the bad guys. Amy knows that there are areas of gray and isn't necessarily looking for that straight up and down, line delineating those different things. But Bond came over and talked about the Nalars, right? Pia and Kieran, who were killed. He also said that he believed that Chandra was killed, but clearly that was wrong.
Right.
And the rest of the Gatewatch was furious with him.
Yes.
And that could, again, be another reason why Nissa wanted to go.
Chandra's a girl, and you killed her parents just because.
And not even that,
what they were doing.
Not even that, but their response was, "You're talking about all this stuff that these rebels did. She was only a child."
Yeah.
Like, you talked about, these things all got burned, and there's like, wait, how many years ago did you say this was? Chandra's only this old now.
Right.
She would have been a child. Chandra barely seems 18. I'm sure that we know how old she is.
They said
and I'm sure I could look it up.
Grown in the story.
She's fully grown, which means she could be. But the situation was 12 years ago.
They also basically said she was a kid. So.
Well, the situation was 12 years ago. 18 minus 12 could still be 6.
18, 19, 20.
Yeah, and she would have still only been a child. So, very, very interesting. I am greatly, not that I wasn't before, but I'm greatly looking forward to what they do with this. I will say, following the end of the Promised End story, which again, you can go watch us talk about that. We also drew some other conclusions of it in the previous episode, which if you haven't gone back and watched the previous episode, again, I encourage you to do that because we get into some harsh truths in that one.
Well,
but this,
I get into harsh truths often.
Right, but I think it was a mutual, and it was kind of solely a harsh truth as opposed to sprinkled in with this was good, but this was bad. It was just like this was what was bad. And
I have no harsh truths about this one.
Exactly. And you know what? The only thing that it made me think of was, with all of the comedy in this one, now there is literally no reason for the last story.
Right.
Because in the last story, my point was, okay, if they needed a comedy story to be in there to break up all of the seriousness, fine, that makes perfect sense. And then the week later, less than a week later, right, because it was Wednesday to Monday, less than a week later, you put out a story where you just throw in so much comedy and combine it so well with story development and character development.
It's better writing and it's better subject matter.
Right.
Because for the other story, if that was the subject matter that I had to work with, I probably wouldn't be able to come up with, a much better story than that.
Yeah.
Because Leovold, who no one knows, and is basically the only character who was in that story, really, sort of inconsequential compared to the Gatewatch.
Yep. Well, and not only that, but if it was leading,
There's no point in developing his character because nobody cares.
And I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt in that story, because I was like, well, they're leading up to next week's story, which is just going to be the big blowout and they all come together.
Or maybe we'll understand how tidbits of this story were actually important, blah, blah, blah.
And then
didn't happen.
Literally nothing. There was no payoff. And you know what, to be completely honest, if that's the case, then break the fourth wall a little bit, right? You want us to be immersed in these stories, which I was fully immersed in this story today. But you want us to be fully immersed in these stories, and then you follow up a story like last week's story by saying, hey, by the way, this is the last story in Conspiracy. We'll see you next week for Kaladesh.
Right.
Instead,
at least get us excited for the next week.
Instead, you dangle that carrot where you're like, well, this is just a recap story, basically with a little bit of humor sprinkled in, and then that's it.
Right.
I mean,
and then
come
guess
on.
What?
Nothing
else about Conspiracy.
No.
Sorry, guys.
Ridiculous.
Oh, well.
Anyway, we're talking about bad, but not about this story, because this story wasn't. But
yes,
I will say,
with this review, it's just go read the story.
This story was great.
I don't have to stand here and really say anything about the story. Just go read it because it's good.
Well, and I appreciated their ability, even though it is the first story, because if you remember, the first story in the Shadows Over Innistrad block had us going, I don't know what the consequence of this story is going to be. Right? We were like, well, we'll have to wait till next week. This time I'm saying we have to wait till next week, but not to say to understand the story, but to, I want to know what happens next. Right. And again, it's not next week, it's, Monday. But
yeah, but that's the thing, like you're trying to convey, I think, is that they did a much better job with this story.
Oh, 100%.
Than not just then that they did with the last story, but that they've done in the past with the stories. They're starting off strong. And
I appreciate that because, as I mentioned earlier, this is a new plane. And you've just, something that we've talked about a lot, you have just gone from eldritch horror. You have just gone from giant titans that can absorb planes to political intrigue.
Right.
Which they're doing very well.
Yeah.
They have not, it's not such a drastic right turn or left turn where you're just Eldrazi, everybody's dying, everybody's corrupted, these planeswalkers are going to die, to there are some rebels, we got to deal with this, and it's not that big.
They're making it work.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't know how. They're just doing it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've said this before.
Writing.
And I've said this before, I didn't doubt it. But I will say, after The Promised End, and after all of the Conspiracy Take the Crown stories, and especially after realizing that there was no payoff for the Conspiracy Take the Crown stories, I was not looking forward to these stories at all.
No.
Because I was a little disheartened by the whole situation. I was like, come on, I was
like, that whole review that we do, it's going to be all about how they didn't even bother to finish Conspiracy, and how terrible it was, and we're barely even going to talk about the new story that comes out.
Right.
And I feel like we sort of barely talked about the new story that came out, but that's because nothing needs to be said.
Yeah.
It's just damn good.
It was so good. And it's, you know what it does? It does a really good job, and this is great for them. It does a very good job of allowing new readers to read this as their first story and go from there. You definitely, like, there are definitely points that you won't understand if you don't have the backstory, but this is, it makes sense, right? Because it's a new plane, you're going to get new players, you're going to get new people interested.
The first new plane of the new story style.
Following the new storyline.
So it makes sense for them to come in strong because hopefully, I don't know, maybe they think that they're going to get a lot more readers this time around.
I hope so.
Or maybe they're kind of hoping to start fresh. You know, and based on the Leovold story and some of the others, I would say that's probably a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, overall, Eldritch Moon, Shadows over Innistrad and Eldritch Moon started strong, floundered a little in the middle, then became strong again, and then ended strong and then petered out.
Yeah.
It was rushed, and it was a little disappointing. Conspiracy Take the Crown, interesting. Disappointing. It just died off, and then there was like the slap in the face of, by the way, there's no more. By the way, that's it. This last story that you thought wasn't very good because it was just a clip show, and it was just repeating everything that you just read for the last 3 weeks, instead of a big blowout where you find out what happened with all these different characters. Nothing. Nothing at all. And, like I said, they didn't even break the fourth wall and tell you, sorry, this is the end.
Right. They didn't even say, like, look, guys, sorry, we know this is a cop-out, but here you go.
Well, not even like, that, because I understand they're a business.
And here's, like, the endings, the little endings that you need sort of tossed in here just so that you have them.
Because Leovold's dossiers, as a story, could have absolutely been him after the fact. Being like, hey, that was weird, right? Those rebels headed up by Adriana, captain of the guard, came in and they fought Marchesa, but Marchesa was able to fight them back, and the only way that they were able to win was when Selvala came in. Like, he could have told that story that we wanted through his dossiers. If that's really the route you wanted to take with it, that could have still been done. Instead, there was just nothing. So,
it kind of seemed like they didn't care.
Yeah, I'm more than okay with not talking about that anymore. Let us know in the comments down below if you disagree, if you agree. That's what the main part of the story is this show is all about, is let us know your opinions. We want a discussion. If you've talked about it with your friends at F&M or at your local game store, or just hanging out playing some kitchen table magic or whatever, let us know what you think. Let us know what you've said. Have you read this story? I hope you've read this story.
This one, yes.
Go read this story. Again, Homesick. Tune back in on Monday. We will be talking about the next story, which the name of it escapes me, but you will see it on Monday. Right. Go read it. Go read it before, just because of the fact that if this story is any indication, they are coming out of the gates swinging with Kaladesh.
They're coming out of the gate. Watch.
Wow.
It's terrible.
Way to kill the mood. Everybody just looked down at that timestamp. They were like, "Is this almost over?" Jesus. Anyway, so
I'm
guys,
pretty sure they clicked off.
That's fine. That's totally fine. If you're still here, subscribe down below. You will find out when that video comes out on Monday. Again, it really depends on when you're watching this one. But if you're just watching the playlist through, then hey, welcome. But Monday's video will come out. This one, as I said, came out on Friday. So you will hear about the next story, and we will be back into the swing of things. Kaladesh going strong. I do not deny the fact that they are probably... There might. You know what? Prove me wrong, but I'm sure that there will be just that one. Right? That one that's just not as perfect, not as polished, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all of them will be fantastic.
Hey, maybe all of them will be horrible after this one, because this one was the great one, and none of the others can compare.
We shall see.
We'll have to know.
But again, they did a long story correctly today.
Yes.
That's all I can tell you. The next one is also a long one, so if you're going to finish watching this and then go read the other one, Be forewarned, they have done it now both ways. They have done a long story well, they have done a long story not well. And you will feel that it is long. This story, we were there for a while, but it never dragged on.
Right.
It was never, okay, when's this story over? Yeah, exactly. So, I highly recommend it. With regards to conspiracy, all I will say is, boom, there's a box right here. It's a little shiny in the light, but you can kind of see it. That box is empty because I've already opened it. There should be a thing over here. Check it out. It was an absolute blast to open. Fair warning, you talk about long, that video is long. But
Yes.
I think, personal opinion, it is worth your time. If I sat in front of a camera for over an hour and opened product, I hope you can watch it and enjoy it. Speaking of watching and enjoying, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we thank you for watching it. This has been Jar, and from the Geek for All YouTube channel, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, first of all, show off your hashtag Vorthos Pride.
Vorthos Pride.
Comments down below. Facebook and Twitter the links to our Facebook and Twitter are in the description down below. And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.